Good morning, dear friend, and we are so glad that you have chosen to spend some time with us here at the Key Radio Morning Show. Your hosts, Grant Burkhalter and yours truly, Heather Zander. And today we have our very, very good friend, Pastor Rodney Zediger of Ephraim Church of the Bible. And we are going to be plowing through, it's not Judges. We finished Judges, but it's kind of Judges, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But before we begin, if you don't mind, I just want to tell you a few things that are happening in your neck of the woods. I know, yes, Easter is over, but that doesn't mean that April is just kind of like, there is so much going on. And because we're your local radio station, we want to make sure that you know about local events that are happening. And so, let's see, if you are in the Provo area, April 5th, that's coming up, friend. First Baptist Church is hosting a pastors conference and also for many ministry leaders. And it's to press on in the good work to which God has called you. The day will be filled with sound doctrinal teaching, fervent singing, and edifying fellowship. That's going to be held at 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. That, again, is April 5th. And for more information, you can just go to the First Baptist Church Provo website, and then you can go ahead and register there. The general admission is $10 just to cover food, right? Because you got to eat. If you're going to learn, you got to eat. Fill up the head, fill up the belly, right? Am I wrong? No, I don't think so. Uinta Basin Christian Academy is also opening enrollment Monday, April 8th. For the 24-25 calendar year, the school year, I should say. And so I think that's really, especially if you're in like the Vernal, Roosevelt, that sort of area, and you're just looking for Christian education for your children, go for that. And for more information, again, you can contact them or us, and we'll give you the information. The Utah Christian Homeschool Association is hosting their 29th annual convention in Salt Lake City, April 12th and the 13th. Man, that's something that, especially if you're a homeschooler or if you are a homeschool or a parent who wants to homeschool your kid, I think that's a great place to get a lot of information and meet a lot of really cool people. And then also on April 27th, there's a conference for the small church and its pastor, and that's going to be at First Baptist Church in Nephi. Okay, there's a lot of First Baptist churches, so I know which city you're in, but it's called the Joy of Small Church Ministry. That's held on April 27th, and for more information, you can contact us, or it's hosted by Barnabas Enrichment Ministries, and you check that out on their website. And while I am at it, let's see here, Pastor Rodney, Ephraim Church of the Bible, what's going on? Or do you have anything coming up that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, we've actually got men's breakfast planned this Saturday at 8:30. We gather as guys and eat together, bring food to share, and we usually get an awesome archaeological lesson by Chip Thompson. So if you're a guy and you're in the Ephraim area, we'd love to have you 8:30 on Saturday, usually first Saturday of the month. Sometimes we shift that around, so check our calendar. That's on ephraimbible.org, and we'd love to see you. Also, of course, Sunday services are always at 10. So, and coffee is usually at 9:30, and we have a Bible study before coffee at 8:30. Discover class going over some of the foundations of the faith. So,
I love
stuff.
that. I love that. And what I love about Discover classes too, if you've been a believer for any number of years, it's always good to just go back and go to basics. I just love it. I absolutely love it. But if friend, take these invitations, because especially like with Discover classes and just getting to know the foundations of the Christian faith, it's so important that you understand what it is. You get all of these smatterings of, Christians believe this, Christians believe that. Well, okay, stop. Why don't you get it from a Christian and from a church that's teaching? And you can say, this is what they're believing. This is what the Bible says. This is what they say that they believe. So I just think it's good to just go there and check it out for yourself. And what you're going to find, friend, is that these people are just really sweet and they just want to know more. And so you'll be among good company, and it's nice to have refreshments as well. So thanks for that.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, let's get started on our conversation. We've got a lot to cover because I'm just laughing because I gave you an email and I said, okay, so we're going to cover the entire book of Ruth. And then this morning you're like, I thought that was an April Fool's joke.
April Fool's, a whole book. Yeah, right. In 1 hour.
But we can do this. We've got to time it. We just got to really use our time wisely here. But let me preface it with that kind of gives you a lot of hope. And what's fascinating about it is that the book of Ruth is actually during the timeline of the book of Judges. In fact, oddly enough, the chronology that I've pulled up in my studies shows that the Book of Ruth was actually happening, occurring during the time of Ehud. And remember, way, 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 way in the early part of our discussion in the Book of Judges, Ehud was the guy that was left-handed. He goes up to Eglon in Moab, and Eglon was this really gigantic fat man, and Ehud was left-handed, and he pierces the guy, and it was really nasty. I'm just thinking about the sound effects now in my head, and it's not pretty. And then it just the whole knife goes into the man's stomach, and it's gone. Like the whole thing is crazy. So this is kind of the backdrop of what's been going. I don't know. Is that the chronology that you're seeing here, Rodney, or?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite lessons to teach junior hires back when I was a youth pastor. We'd have them acted out, not fully, but
Yeah.
it was great stuff.
Put on this Batman suit. Here we go.
I mean, and people say the Bible's boring.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
come on,
Mhm.
like that's crazy. But yeah, we're not told exactly where in the book of Judges this falls. It could be earlier, it could be later, but it definitely connects to, because Ruth is a Moabitess, and so Eglon was the king of Moab, and Ehud takes him out, and it actually says that they basically decimated Moab at that time. Israel took over. So if this was around that time or after, it would kind of make sense, this whole idea of Naomi's two sons marrying Moabite women, because, well, they would be maybe husbandless, or maybe there was no, eligible bachelors in Moab anymore because Israel wiped them out.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That is amazing. So again, when you're reading the Bible, friend, you have to really throw it into context. It's so easy for people nowadays to pick and choose what they want the Bible to say, and blah blah blah. But that's just first off, it's just not honest, right? But number two, you're missing out on a lot of richness, because nothing is done by itself alone. Nothing else affecting it around, affecting the account around it. There's just so much going on. So it's just really good to know that context, and just like, wow, okay, so these are real people dealing with some really, really hard things, and the Book of Ruth is no exception to that. So let's get started now that we kind of understand where about the Book of Ruth takes place. Again, this is like the light for me. It's like if we didn't have Ruth, I think Judges would be just so hard. But it's good that the Lord has just been really. He's raising people up for his glory too. Like so there's hope, right? There's hope. But if you're going to notice as we're reading this, that there's hope, because these people, unlike the others, they were actually following the Lord, and that's kind of exciting. So let's just get started here. So it is.
Well, one of the really cool things in Judges, I mean, you go back to Judges, and it says, I think about 4 different times, there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. So it was a messy time. It was a broken time. It was a dangerous time to live. And there was no king in Israel. And so you see these judges being raised up. You see this cycle of disobedience happening. And, then God brings judgment, punishes his people. That maybe the famine was related to that when they left town. We don't know. But if, spoiler alert, as you read through the book of Ruth, we find out it is actually God providing Israel their best and greatest king. So the book ends with David, and it's like, wait, what? It's totally a surprise ending. Like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. But in this time where there's no king in Israel, and every man did what that was right in his own eyes, God is working, moving providentially behind the scenes to bring about his chosen king, really the picture of the Messiah. And greater spoiler alert, Ruth shows up. I think the only time outside the book of Ruth that Ruth is mentioned and named is in Matthew's gospel, in the genealogy of our Lord Jesus Christ. So just crazy cool stuff.
Wow. Yeah. This is so fun. So days of the judges, right? They ruled. There was a famine in the land. That's how we started out in the book of Ruth, friend. Okay, so if you're following along, that's where we're at. Now, I'm going to kind of paraphrase because there's so much and we got just a little bit of time to do this here. But there was a man named Elimelech, and he was living in Bethlehem, and he decided he was going to go to the country of Moab. And again, I think that's really important that you understand. So he was in Bethlehem, which was to the west of the Dead Sea, like where Bethlehem is, right? Okay, but so he actually had to travel on the top of the Dead Sea and then go south to get to Moab. So it was quite a journey, and he had to pass through a lot of his like kinsmen's places, like the different tribes. So he's leaving his tribe and he's passing all these other Israelite tribes to get to Moab, which I just think is interesting. I don't know why he would do that, but he had his wife, who's Naomi, and he had his two sons, right? Mahlon and Chilion. And they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah, it says, okay? Well, okay, lo and behold, Elimelech dies, and then Naomi's left with her two sons, and they took Moabite wives, which then enter Ruth, right? As Ruth and Orpah, not Oprah. There's a big difference there, okay? and so they lived there for about 10 years, and then the men died. Mahlon and Chilion died, and we don't know why they died. It could have, if we put it is possible if we put it into the timeline of where like Eglon was, maybe there was some repercussions by the Moabites, who knows, but they died. It's very vague, but it's kind of interesting. Kind of think about it.
Their names actually mean something like weak and sickly. Like Mahlon is so, yeah, Hebrew names mean things, and I don't know why they named their kids that. Like, who would do that? But yeah, this is scrawny and pathetic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Which is interesting, actually. Elimelech, El is the name of God,
Mm-hmm.
and Melech is king. So it's a name that references God the king. And in this time of the judges, when there's no king in Israel, God is the king, but he is going to raise up his king. So anyways, just kind of cool little tidbit in that.
I love it. I love it. So Naomi gets okay, there's nothing left. She's got these two daughters-in-law, but there's no boys. Her husband's gone, and she goes and she decides, well, I'm going to go back to my people from Moab. And she set out with her two daughters to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi turns to her two daughters-in-laws and she says, listen, you go back to your people. I have nothing for you. Even if I could have children, it would take you forever before this child would be of age to even give, because there was the what was it called, the Levirate marriage,
yeah.
right? So, and she's like, I can't even do that for you. So just go to your people and start over. And so they're weeping, and it's a whole big thing. But then Orpah goes, okay, I'm off. But Ruth is like, no. I am going to go with you. And she says something that is she just says something that's just so beautiful that most people will say. But she says, don't urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. So she just loves her mother-in-law, and she's following the Lord, right? It sounds like she's like, your God will be my God. And let's face it, at this time of the judges, the Israelites were actually really enticed to be worshiping the gods of the Moabites, the god of the Midianites, and the Philistines, and so this is quite a turn.
That's
Yeah,
huge.
it really says something when one of these foreigners, when a Moabite woman says, I recognize your God as being the true God, and I will worship your God, while the chosen people of Israel, the people that God chose to be his people and for him to be their God, they're the ones that are seeking after the false gods of the Moabites and all these other people groups. But I think it's also important to notice that this was a very patriarchal society, in that it was structured around the family unit, where it's all inheritance. So the means of work and property was passed on from father to son. And so having a woman, so first of all, having a a man who says, "We're going to leave my inheritance. We're going to leave, presumably his farmland, his family home." He says, "We're going to leave all that because of this famine, and we're going to move to a foreign country." That alone is huge. But then to have him in his scheme, in his plan, something unbeknownst to him happens and he dies and his sons die. And so now his widow, Naomi, she has nothing. She's in a foreign land and everything that she did have is now gone. And she has no way of reclaiming their old home. There's nothing for her to go back to. But still, she is going back to where they came from, regardless of not having anything really to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
And so having Ruth and Orpah being willing to go with her until she says, "Hey, I don't have anything to offer you. This is just, I would rather die in my homeland." And so Ruth saying, "I will go with you, and whatever may come will come," is a massive decision where she is saying, "I will live and die with you." And so her just pledging herself to her mother-in-law like this is massive. And so looking at Orpah and saying, look at her, she's not willing to go with him. It's like, yeah, that's, I mean, that was the wise decision there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't know. I feel like we can, in uplifting what Ruth has done, we kind of look down on what Orpah did, but it's like, no, this, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that.
Well, and it's so fascinating because you've got this Jewish woman who has experienced just amazing amounts of grief, and it seems everything has gone wrong for her, and she even says, the hand of Yahweh has gone out against me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my God is against me. Obviously, look at my circumstances. He must. I mean, she doesn't say this, but he must hate me. He's not doing me any favors, any good. And so don't stick around with me. And you could say, in some ways, she's being a horrible testimony. She's being a horrible witness to the Lord. She's not speaking good of the Lord. She is speaking good of her daughter. She's like, "Hey, you're being kind to me, and may God be kind to you as well." But God is not being kind to me. In fact, later she says, "Yeah, don't call me Naomi. Don't call me pleasant." That's what her name meant. She says, "Call me Mara. Call me bitter, because God is against me." And so she is not really being winsome and saying, "Oh, Yahweh, the God of Israel, is worth following. You should follow him instead of Chemosh, the God of Moab." She's actually saying, "No, go back to Moab, and go back to your people, and go back to Chemosh, your false god." And it's like, as a believer in the true God, why would you say that? That's a horrible thing to say. If you really believe your God is the only true God, you should be inviting them, not, turning them away. But in some ways you could look at it as she's encouraging them to count the cost. If you really want to follow God, it's going to cost you everything. You're going to have to leave your family. You're going to have to leave your God, and turn to the one true God. And that is exactly, and there is that choice. Orpah chooses, you're right, there's nothing for me, I'm going to go back. And Ruth says, "I know there's nothing for me, and yet I want to follow your God." And so you've got the Jewish lady, almost an unbeliever, and you've got the Gentile, false God worshiping person who turns and says, "I want to follow your God," even though you've not portrayed him in such a great light.
Mm-hmm. I really love the human despair here, because again, how this is God's word, and it doesn't it doesn't kind of tiptoe around the human experience, the human emotion here, the desperation that Naomi has, the bitterness that she has, the God, why are you forsaking me? I mean, she's really unhappy. She feels like God has abandoned her, and I think that a lot of us today we can look at this and say, I'm going through so much right now. I don't know why the Lord is allowing such tragedy in my life. So I really appreciate this about the Bible, but God doesn't let us, I mean, He's allowing us to feel what we feel. But in so doing, though, He's also pointing to just don't stay there, because you don't doubt God. God is good, and God is going to do something here. Even you can't see it, can you trust in me? And that's what I really appreciate about especially this particular account.
Yeah, it's easy for us to look at the book of Ruth and to know the ending and to be like, we can see God working clearly in retrospect. But keep in mind, in this moment, everything's been taken from Naomi. She says, call me Mara, call me bitter, because I went out full and I came back empty. And so many people are in this moment right now where they feel so empty, where everything has been taken from them. All joy has just been sapped from their lives, and they just feel like empty husks of what they used to be. And it's okay to be in that moment, but I want to encourage you that God is still good, even in the death, even in the sorrow and the loss and the emptiness and the bitterness. And I'm not going to tell you everything is going to work out like it worked out for Naomi, but I think this is a good example for us to look to see how God is working. And I'm not going to tell you that God is using every little thing that you've lost, but that God is still good even in the loss.
Mm-hmm.
And God is at work. And I think this whole story is just a beautiful picture of that.
Mm-hmm. So we got to make up some time here. Remember when we said if
we
it's like
go.
9:25 and we're not halfway, we got to cruise. But this is all so good. So I don't want to close out for this. So she's upset. She's bitter. She goes to a land. Ruth is with her. Ruth is basically the mortal enemy of the Jews at this point. So Ruth is walking into a situation that's not good. And yet, though, she is being very faithful to her mother-in-law, which is amazing. Now they're poor. They're really poor. They have nothing. They have no land. They have nothing. And so what's amazing, I was just reading this morning in the law of Moses, the whole idea of taking care of your poor. Like, this is something that you're supposed to do this not just for each other, but also for the foreigner, right? And there's this thing called gleaning. So Rodney, tell us what's going to happen next.
Yeah. So, and that is a beautiful thing about God's law is it made it very clear, yes, Israel is my chosen people, but I ultimately am after the nations. And he set it up in such a way that foreigners, he says, you as Israelites, you understand what it's like to be a foreigner in a strange land. You were slaves in Egypt for 400 years. So you ought to treat foreigners well because you walked in their shoes for a long time. So one of the things that he provided for them is, hey, don't glean to the edges of your fields. Don't pick up, if you drop stuff, leave it so that the people can come along and pick it up. And so it was a great economic system to where it wasn't government handouts that you just sit on your couch and click the remote and the president signs you checks and sends them to your house. It was, well, there's food in the field. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to get up and go work, you can pick up food legitimately in somebody else's field. You can walk through, Jesus' disciples walked through somebody else's field. They were picking ears of grain and they were eating them. That was legal under that system. You couldn't go into somebody else's field with a sickle and, right, just harvest their grain and steal it. But there were these laws where if stuff falls down, if they don't get everything the first pass, it was intentionally left to take care of the poor, the orphans, the widows, which is a beautiful thing.
So this is really what Ruth ends up doing. She goes out into a field and she's gleaning, and I think that Ruth is just a really sweet person. She's doing things that are really hard, very very difficult because she's not used to this culture. Moab is very different than Bethlehem, right? So she goes ahead and she does this. And then this man named Boaz enters the scene, and he just comes in by his people, and he says, "The Lord be with you." I just feel like he's Santa Claus. I just love this guy, right? I just feel like he's just such a boisterous, loving man. And then he looks over and he goes, "Hey, who's that? Who's that lady?" Which I think is interesting. And then the servant who is in charge of the reapers, he says, "Well, that's the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. And she asked, can I glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers?" And so she came, and she's been here all day. She's been here all day, except for a short rest. She's been working really hard. That's basically what he's saying. Okay, so we're starting to understand a little bit more about the character of Ruth and the fact that she's really caring for her mother-in-law. This is not something that has lost on Boaz, right?
Yeah.
So Boaz is like, and he decides
You've got Boaz as this man of integrity, this man of, I mean, if you're a business owner and you want a good role model, read the book of Ruth and just look at Boaz and how he treats his employees, how he treats strangers, and just his character. He's got integrity.
Yes, he has great integrity, and he sees it in other people as well.
Yeah.
And so then he goes ahead and he says, "You know what?" He goes right to Ruth and says, "Listen," listen, my daughter. Like, it's so kind. She's a Moabite, and yet he says, "Listen, my daughter." Just don't lose sight of that either. He doesn't have to like her. She's a mortal enemy, and yet look at how he's dealing with her. And he says, "Don't go to another field and glean. Okay, just stay close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them." Okay, I've told these young men who are also here not to touch you. You are protected here. So basically, he's caring for her. And then he goes, and she's just like, "Oh, why have I found favor?" Like, she's so grateful and she's so thankful. And she recognizes her station among the rest of them, and she's just humbled. She's humbled to be able to be protected like this. And Boaz says to her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother in your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. Let the Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward will be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Rodney, this is a blessing, is it not?
Absolutely.
This man is
Absolutely.
amazing. So
He goes way above and beyond anything that he was expected, even under the law. He's absolutely being faithful to the law, but he's going so far beyond. I mean, come sit at the table. You don't have to draw your own water, drink ours. Here's bread and wine. Dip your bread in the wine. Enjoy a feast with. He's including her as if she was one of his own, and it's just that overabundant grace that he extends to this foreigner who really would have been despised. Because if you understand the backstory of Moab, Israel went through Moab on their way to the promised land, and the king of Moab, Balak, was like, "Oh no, these people are a threat." So he hires this prophet Balaam to curse Israel. And they try a bunch of different times. God turns the curse into a blessing every time. But it seems like through the story, Balaam is still wanting the cash that this king offered him. So he says, "Hey, try this. Send your women and see if you can seduce the Israelites to immorality and to idolatry, to get your women to lead the Israelite men astray, worship false gods. God himself will turn against his people." That's exactly what happens. That's what goes down. So these Moabites would be looked at as idolaters, following a false god, and seducers who were leading the people of Israel astray. That's kind of the ethnic baggage that a Moabite woman would have, and that's throughout the story. She's called Ruth the Moabitess. Ruth the Moabitess. This woman from Moab is like, "Oh, she's a bad woman. Stay away from her." And yet she's not. She's chosen to follow Yahweh, God of Israel, and Boaz is extremely gracious, unusually gracious to her.
Yeah, and this is a time when everyone is doing what's right in their own eyes. And we saw throughout the book of Judges, we saw all these people who were forsaking the law of Moses. They were turning away, and they were doing whatever was best for them, for their family. And noteworthy for us to see about Boaz is that he is a man of integrity, while everyone else is just doing whatever they think is best for them. While everyone else is running around looking out for number one, he is looking out for his workers. He is looking out for the foreigners. He is not only observing the law, but the letter of the law, but he is observing the spirit of the law. He is loving his neighbor. So I think that's an important thing for us to note about Boaz's character.
This whole story is a light in the middle of a really, really dark time.
I'm so glad we have the Book of Ruth. So he's so generous too, and I don't even think she understands how generous he is until she gets home, and she's got all of this grain with her that she's gleaned. She takes it and goes to the city, and Naomi sees it, and she's like, what? What just happened here? She's like, where have you worked? And she says, blessed be the man who took notice of you. So she's like, this was not what she expected. There was an abundance here. They thought they were just going to eke around, maybe starve a little bit. This is the way it was supposed to go. No. So she told her, like, I worked today with Boaz. Boaz was there, and Naomi right away says, oh, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. And she says that because of the history too, because she's thinking about her husband as well and her sons, so the living and the dead. He's honoring not just them, but also the whole family. Because otherwise, Elimelech would be just really out of the picture because he was dead and there was nobody to take over his... The whole thing is just a mess. So she's seeing that he is even honoring her family, her whole family. And then she's like, and he's a close relative of ours. Here it is. One of our redeemers. That's the word I wanted to get to today. This is fantastic. Rodney, go ahead.
Oh, it's such a cool concept. And it goes back to the Old Testament law. This is why the Old Testament is so essential for us as believers to understand who Jesus is, because we use that term. Jesus is our Redeemer. He redeemed us. What does redeem? What does that mean? You look back to Leviticus 25. If there was redemption of land and there was redemption of people. If someone like Naomi and Elimelech sold their land, the land belonged to God. He gave it to his people as a gift. It was divided up among the people. Each person had their portion. That was to be kept in the family. You were not to sell land. If you had to sell land, you could, but it was really more of a lease rental agreement where somebody would work the land for a number of years. There was the year of Jubilee, the 50th year, where all land would return to its original owners. And so you calculated, we only got 20 years left. The price is this because that's how much time you've got to use the land, but it's going to go back. But in between that time, you could redeem the land. If circumstances changed, you had enough money, you could buy the land back. It would come back to you. People were in the same situation. You could hire yourself out as a slave or a servant if it got that bad, and you could serve other people. If there was somebody, a near relative, that saw you in that desperate of a situation, they were to come to your aid, and they were to say, hey, brother, I can help you out. They would pay the price, whatever. They would pay off the person you were indebted to, that you had sold yourself to, and bring you under their own care and take care of you and buy your freedom, really. So it was not the early American kind of slavery, but this was a process of welfare, really. Like if I got in rough shape, I could sell myself, and if I liked it, I could actually become a bondservant and say, I want to stay. I don't want freedom. you're a good master. I'd like to be your employee or servant the rest of my life. So there was this relationship that could go on, but this redemption process was this opportunity to buy someone out of slavery, and that's what's happening here. And it's kind of mixed up with this Levirate marriage thing, where there was this was also a provision under the law where if you were again, that you needed a male to protect you, to care for you, to provide for your needs. And so if your husband died, the brother of your husband was supposed to marry you and raise up seed for continuity, so give you descendants so that your brother's name would not be lost from the land. And so again, it was this charitable act of saying, take care of widows and orphans, and in a really practical, tangible ways. And so this is what's going on. And Boaz is in that role of someone who is in the relationship stream to where he would be legitimate to redeem Ruth, which is an awesome thing.
This is fantastic, and really the redemption of Naomi too. I mean, the whole thing is just
Yes.
beautiful, and I love how you said they didn't have a welfare thing. And in many ways, I just say it's because it's so relational, and family's taking care of family, and you're going out on a limb to help somebody. In many ways, I feel like it's even better because nowadays it's so impersonal, and we don't really actually
Yes.
understand the person. We're too busy just throwing money at a situation instead of like really, really going to the Lord before them and praying for the people who need help and to be a part of their lives. So anyway, just my little old opinion, but we got to keep going. Oh, we're doing so well.
Yes.
I'm so proud of you. So, all right. So this is happening, and she goes back and she's getting more. She's just gleaning until the end of the barley and the wheat harvests. So it's been a while here, and she's living with Naomi. Now Naomi gets something in her head, and I love Naomi. She's a smart woman, and I think she's starting to feel hope. I think she's been incredibly blessed by Ruth, and I really think she wants. This isn't just about serving, but I think she really wants to bless Ruth, and she's seen the Lord do some things, and she doesn't want to spend another minute hemming and hawing about it. She wants to. There's got to be some action here. So Naomi says, Ruth, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? I just love this. She loves Ruth. You could just tell here. Is not Boaz our relative? And I love how she says our relative. Like this is family now, right? Isn't he our relative with whose young women you were? He's winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. So, so basically, she's like, okay, gussy up, sister. Put on your nicest dress, and get your hair done real nicely. Put on some nice makeup maybe, and some perfume. I'm just guessing. I don't know what they do. And she says, she goes, put on your cloak and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man, Boaz, until he has finished eating and drinking. So let him do his thing. Let him do the celebrating and everything. But when he lies down, observe where he's lying down, okay? And then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. Okay, this is weird for us. So tell us what is Naomi telling Ruth to do exactly?
Yeah, it's really almost it's like, is this okay? Like this is really a weird and kind of assertive kind of thing. Basically, she is, wash and anoint yourself. So basically in that culture, hey, you don't want the BO going on. You cover that up, like get yourself cleaned up. And so you're presentable, and this was a labor time, so they were working. This was harvest time. But yeah, go uncover his feet, so his feet get cold, and he wakes up and in the middle of the night, and you're there, and it sounds like there's people sleeping all over everywhere. So it's not like they're alone together in the barn, right?
Right.
There's other people, but he kind of is startled. He wakes up. He's like, "What is going on?" And he recognized this is Ruth. It's dark. They don't have their LED flashlights back then. And,
They don't have their cell phones.
so, yeah, that's like, pay attention to where he lays down before it's all the way dark.
Don't go to the wrong person.
Yeah. Oh no, I didn't mean you.
Sorry, Bob.
And behold, it was Leah. But yeah, so he wakes up and he's like, "Whoa, what's going on? Who are you? Who is at my feet?" And she says, I'm Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer. And so she's basically she's making a marriage proposal to this guy. That's kind of different for, it's like, I thought the guy was supposed to propose to the lady, but she is basically saying, hey, I'm I'm available, and I would love for you to take care of our family. She's basically throwing the Levitical law back in this Jew's lap and saying, this is an opportunity. Is this something you're willing to do?
Mm.
And he says yes. In fact, he says, this is even a greater blessing than to your mother-in-law than everything else you've done so far. What you're doing here is showing your covenant faithfulness. Even when Naomi thinks God has been unfaithful to her, you are showing covenant faithfulness not only to God, but to her, to me, all these things. So she is a woman of faith and boldness, and it goes well for her. He responds, but there's a catch. But there's a catch. There's a fly in the ointment. There's somebody that's a nearer relative. So really, he has the right before I do. So yes, I would redeem you, but this isn't a done deal yet. We've got to see. And so ultimately, it's in the hands of this other guy, and ultimately, it's under the providence of God that he is saying, I've got to relinquish my right. This guy has the right first. So we have to follow the due procedure. We have to do what's right. And so, oh no, now what's going to happen? There's another catch to the story.
But what I love about this is he knows that. Like, he,
Yes.
like I wonder if he kind of thought about it in the back of his mind this whole time. And he's like,
He's
oh,
done some research.
yeah, it just seems to me he was prepared for this moment. Not exactly this
Yes.
moment, but he knew what he was about. He knew what had to happen. So he says, okay, so here's what you're going to do. Just here, take all this food, all this grain. And it's just like, I'm pretty sure like she was like dragging it home so much. Right. But he says, don't go to your mother-in-law empty handed, and wait till you learn about what's going to happen. And then Ruth goes back and she says, Ruth goes back to Naomi and says, okay, here's what just happened. And she's like, well, don't worry. He's going to take care of this by the end of the day, right? At this point, Naomi's like, I know what's going to happen. And she knows Boaz. Naomi knows Boaz. She knows that this is a man of integrity, and she knows that whatever happens, he's going to take care of something here. So there's hope here now, finally, for Naomi. This is so good. So Boaz then begins the day, goes to the gates, and he gathers all the elders around, and he gets the guy who's the near kinsman redeemer, if you will, and he just kind of sets this whole thing up and says, okay, dude, here is your opportunity. And okay, Rodney, what's going on next?
The gate of the city was where the business transactions were done, and that was how things rolled. And I mean, he sets this thing up for this guy. He's like, hey, there's this property, you need to buy it. So if he bought the property, that would help out Naomi. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm in. And he says, oh, and by the way, when you buy it, you get this Moabite woman as a wife, and you've got it. And he's like, whoa, I didn't sign up for that. I can't. That would actually harm my own inheritance. So that was a dishonorable thing that he did, to say no. And the whole sandal removed. This was a way to show dishonor. Like, if you're not going to do what you're called to do, you were to the person was to take your sandal off and spit in your face. And that was a slur. The guy whose sandal was removed, like, oh, you're the guy whose sandal was removed. You didn't follow through on your obligations. You're dishonorable. So there was a dishonor attached to that, and yet he was in a position where, and maybe this is another instance of every man was doing that which was right in his own eyes. He's looking out for his own interests, not the interests of others. Whereas as Boaz, he says, I care about this woman and her mother-in-law. I want to take care of this family. I want to bless them. And so he is willing to step in and do that.
hmm And it's fascinating because the elders, who are all witnesses of this, they then do this amazing blessing. This blessing is, you kind of don't expect it because, again, Ruth is a
Yeah.
Moabitess, but they said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah." And if you understand who Rachel and Leah are, these are the women of, these are the wives of Jacob. They are
Yeah.
the mothers of the 12 tribes of
Right.
Israel. So that's a kind of a good blessing. Who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem, and make your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. I mean, this is a high honor from these people, because the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman. Did they really understand what they were blessing her with? We keep going, right? So
Oh,
Boaz,
and there's
go ahead, yeah.
some weird stuff there, because if you go back and understand the family dynamics of Rachel and Leah, and the tension between these two wives, that one was loved, one was unloved, and they're throwing their handmaids at their husband to bring, it's a mess. It's a disaster of a family relationship, and yet even through that disaster, God brought about the 12 tribes of Israel. And then Perez is even worse, who Tamar bore to Judah. Tamar was I believe, a non-Jewish woman who was married to Judah's son. Judah's son died, and so this Levirate marriage thing, he gives her his next son, and he dies, and she's like, this woman is toxic. Like, I'm not giving her any more of my sons. So he sends her back home to her dad, and his third son grows up and he doesn't give her to her. So she dresses up as a prostitute, goes out. Judah comes through law
Ugh.
and gets her pregnant. And then he's like, oh, she played the prostitute. Let's stone her to death. And she's like, yeah, it was this guy. And she's got his ID that he gave her when she, that whole thing went down. And so he raises up children, offspring. So these are illegitimate children through a prostitute type of relationship with his daughter-in-law. So there's incest going. It's a mess. It's a disaster. The Bible doesn't sugarcoat, candy coat
No,
stuff. It
no.
tells it like it is. And so you've got this kind of Levirate marriage gone so wrong. But this is the line of Judah, and Judah is the line of the king, of the ultimately the Messiah. And now you have Ruth, the Moabitess, involved in this family line. And so there's so I don't know if that was a backhanded like insult, or if this was genuinely like, oh, Judah is a great tribe now and they're bringing about leaders, and so yeah, be like Judah and Tamar. It's like
Yeah, but they really held Tamar in high regard, because
yeah,
she went ahead and did what was supposed to be done according to the
right,
law, even when Judah and his awful kids
yes,
decided to turn away from the Lord. So,
it's
I
true,
mean, I think this is like, hey, she's a woman that did a hard thing to
yeah,
keep the family going, and so I think that they held
right,
her in high regard, and so
yeah.
I feel like I just this. This is so amazing. So so then the Lord gave her a son, right? And
Yes.
Naomi is just absolutely, she's so blessed. The women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day." And I'm saying Naomi, not Ruth. This is Naomi, mother-in-law,
Yes.
okay? So the ladies are saying to Naomi, the grandma, "Blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." And then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. I'm just getting chills. This is so sweet. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi," and they named him Obed. And he was the father of Jesse, and Jesse is the father of, eventually, King David.
David.
Okay. And then we get a bit of a genealogy of David, which is all amazing because this goes on to be the line, the line of our Messiah, who this is incredible. I want to spend at least a few minutes now wrapping this up. We got through the story. But the overall, if it was just a great story, it'd be great, right? But
Mm.
this is reflecting something grander, is it not?
Absolutely. I mean, God made promises to his people. He is the covenant keeping, faithful God. And even when his people are unfaithful and disobedient to him, and and he's faithful to his people, but he invites the stranger, the foreigner, in to his covenant to become part of, not just part of, but ancestor of the Messiah King. And even when we're unfaithful, and even when everything seems to be going against us, even when it feels like the hand of God himself is against me, he may be working things out. We have no idea. And he is always faithful to his promises. And so Naomi, on the backside of this story, comes out and says, God has been faithful to me. Even when in the front end of the story, I felt like God had turned against me. Not only had he turned away and ignored me, but his hand was actively against me, to crush me, to
Mm.
destroy me. And no, he is for you, and he is bringing about these events to bless you, and ultimately it's bigger than you. It's, yes, he cares about the individual, but he's going to bless the world with the Messiah Jesus, who's coming to ultimately save us from our sins
Mhm.
and set us really truly free, to be our greater redeemer that takes us to himself. And we, the Gentile bride, are brought into that relationship with our Redeemer Jesus.
Hmm. Friend, do you understand what's happening here? I mean, this is a reflection, really, of what's going to come. It's a type, if you will. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. He is God from all eternity, but he put on flesh. He became fully human, and then he lived a sinless life. That's something that we could not do, and he redeemed us by dying on the cross for our sins in our place. Do you see what he has done? He is greater than he's greater than Boaz, that's for sure, right? But he
Yes.
did something even grander. He redeemed us from our sins. He paid the penalty for us, so that and we're not just mere like, hey, we're now saved and we're redeemed, but we are in his family, the family of God. Before, we were children of wrath, but then when you place your trust and you accept his gift, his invitation, his look what I've done for you, will you take this gift of salvation because I've already paid the price, and you receive that, you become a child of God and enjoy all of the benefits of being a child of God. I mean, incredible, incredible. He is the kinsman redeemer. And today, friend, he offers that to you. Will you receive that gift, what he's already paid for? It is by grace that you are saved, friend. It's not anything that you do, everything. It is by works, but it's Jesus's works, not of your own works. We don't boast about it. We only boast in Christ. And so receive that gift today. And if you have, we would love to hear from you. keyradio.org, mail at keyradio.org, and let us know. And we would love to connect you with a family of believers in your neck of the woods who will be able to help you learn and to grow. It's a wonderful thing, because really you are now in a family very similar to what Ruth had no family. She went with Naomi, and then you get a family. It's an incredible. There's just so many truths in here, and it's such a
Yes.
deep book. And I want you. It's a short book. There's only 4 chapters. It's one of my favorites, but it's just so theologically deep when you really consider the goodness of God. Incredible, absolutely incredible. So, but if you are in Ephraim or in that area, friend, I really want you to consider going to Ephraim Church of the Bible. Pastor Rodney, you just love the Lord. Your church family loves the Lord. You have clear Bible teaching. How would we connect with you?
Our website is ephraimbible.org. That's got info, and we're at 400 South, 400 East on the corner. And stop by, It's 10 o'clock on Sundays is our service. Come early for coffee. Come early for a Bible study.
And the
That's at
discovery
8:30.
class, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we'd love to meet you.
And your sermons are online as well. I was noticing
Yes, they
too.
are.
So check them out. And if you're not in the Ephraim area, let us know, and we will connect you with somebody who we know and love and trust. Because it's so very important. Our time went so fast, Pastor Rodney, and I really, really thank you for taking on the challenge of going through an entire book of the Bible.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Love it.
Dear friend, we hope this has been an encouragement to you and that we have made Jesus famous in your life.